enjoying the contest, the physical prowess, the display of teamwork, all of those things that we think is very inspiring about sport for our young people. Sorry? Well, that's a question for parents, but I know when I watch AFL match at home that you do. For me, it's probably check the phones, check the emails, those sorts of things at quarter time, half time, three-quarter time. In days gone by when I had a little bit more spare time, you'd have a pot around the house and go and grab a drink and something to nibble on for the second half of the football. I mean, people can do all of that. If they do all of that, then they will not be exposed to any gaming advertisements.
I mean, if we can just reiterate a point the Prime Minister's made, that if TV stations try and abuse that period by putting wall-to-wall gambling ads on in the half-time breaks or quarter-time break, then we will act further. That's not going to be an acceptable process. They are on notice, but if they abuse that period, we will take further action. I mean, if you're like me on Friday night, you're probably turning off the footy to go and do something else, but we'll be very clear about this. If they start increasing the intensity as a response to this in those now allowed periods, we will take further action. Well, we will go and we will consider and put in place legislation so that they can't abuse the process. We're saying, look, let's be reasonable, let's have a conversation about this, but if they choose to abuse and increase the intensity at half times and the other periods are allowed to, then we will take further action.
Given the response to gambling fast, why not legislate now?
Well, if a code is brought forward in accordance with what we've announced today, then there is no need to legislate because the whole industry will be regulated as we've announced today. So the code will come in to the relevant government authority and that government authority will regulate it. If the broadcasters don't step up and bring forward a code that complies with what we've announced today, then we will legislate. As Minister Conroy says, we believe we've got the balance right by enabling there to still be gambling advertisements at half-time, quarter-time. But if the intensity of those advertisements gets over the top, then we reserve the right to come back in and make further changes.
So, Minister, can I ask you about Conroy? Are you
Sure.
confident that you can reach an agreement with the state by June 30?
Well, on our school funding reform, can I start by making an apology? Yesterday I referred to the Minister for Education in New South Wales as a Liberal minister. Of course, Mr Pickley is a member of the National Party, and I want to apologise for any offence or umbrage that was taken by Mr Pickley because I referred to him as a Liberal, so if we could get the record straight on that. Second, on our school funding, school improvement agenda, we're continuing to work hard with other states and territories, and I'm continuing to call on premiers and chief ministers around the country to do what Barry O'Farrell has done here and to put the kids in their jurisdiction first. We'll keep working on this. I've got some confidence that we will make further progress because I do believe the case for change is overwhelming. And if I can point to the National Party Minister, Mr Pickley, he, over the course of this weekend, has destroyed every argument put forward by Tony Abbott and his team against school funding reform.
Prime Minister, just on another issue, overnight David Cameron has said that he would consider banning clerics from inciting hate speech following the death of a soldier in the UK. Are you going to consider something similar here?
Hate speech is already unlawful in Australia under our Racial Discrimination Act. There is a proposal for change, and that is that the Leader of the Opposition has announced if he were Prime Minister, he would abolish that provision. I believe in the hate speech provision. I think it should be unlawful for people to use speech to incite acts of violence and to incite discrimination and hatred. So we will be fighting to preserve the provision that makes it unlawful.
In fact, calls from the New Movement for a summit on the car industry. Have you had any further discussions about when that will be held and what will be up for discussion?
I, as Prime Minister, created the Prime Minister's Manufacturing Task Force. We knew that in this time of transition in our economy, it would be difficult days for manufacturing. Our economy is a resilient one. We've come out of the global financial crisis strong. a byproduct of that is a very strong Australian dollar, and that's been bringing a lot of pressure to bear on manufacturing. We knew that that would be occurring. That's why I created the Manufacturing Task Force and why we announced our $1 billion plan for Australian jobs. In the wake of Ford's announcement, what I've determined to do is to bring task force members back together for some further discussion. So we will be building out of the Prime Minister's Manufacturing Task Force structure. We haven't set a date for that yet, but we were able to have a preliminary conversation on Friday because I have a regular meeting with the business community and with trade unions, and that meeting was Friday. We've already announced substantial assistance to make sure that we can diversify the economies of Geelong and Broadmeadows and get those working people who are obviously feeling the brunt of Ford's announcement a new opportunity.
Could I just emphasise the point the Prime Minister's making? On Friday, in unfortunate timing, I was at the opening of the new part of the Cornings factory that is building the cables that are being used for the national broadband network. They're moving from about 180 workforce to nearly 400. In the afternoon, I was visiting a company called Warren and Brown in Maidstone in Melbourne, who increased their workforce because they're supplying manufactured parts to the national broadband network. And while I was at Cornings, they announced that they were just let a contract to a Mordialloc-based company in Melbourne that is building the housing for all of the parts that are used in the Cornings fibre cabling. So there is a lot of work coming in the manufacturing area around the national broadband network, and that was demonstrated to me very ably on Friday. So there is a future for manufacturing in this country, and those who want to argue that we should just give it up are just ideological zealots.
Prime Minister, the NRMA is suggesting perhaps you could provide $150 million
We've been very big investors into infrastructure in Sydney. We've invested $5.5 billion. That's 15 times more than the Howard government did during all of its years in office. And much of that money is directed to fixing the spots where the gridlock gets the worst. Just in recent days, I've been to the Central Coast to look at the site where our money will be making a difference for people who travel from the Central Coast to Sydney. That is the work that we're doing to improve the F3 and to build the missing link to the M2 $600 million package. So we're continuing to work hard to improve Sydney's infrastructure. Yes, there was a lot of neglect under the Howard government, and we've been working hard to make that neglect up.
last question.
You can say yes to our continuing investments at record levels, trying to overcome the backlog from the Howard government, investment 15 times more. We announced just in budget week $24 billion of extra investment into infrastructure. That's our next nation-building package. And you can see in there the investments that we're making in New South Wales. So we'll continue investing at record levels. No, I've never bet on a football. I do my football tips, so I tip the dogs every week. That does mean that some weeks it's pretty hard to get a clean sweep on your footy tips. I've never had a bet on a football match. I've put the occasional $10 on the Melbourne Cup, and that's the limit of betting for me. Thank you very much.